Then on Sports Central, we go over a March Madness game preview and prediction on the national championship matchup between the UConn Huskies and the Purdue Boilermakers. Two teams that have had incredible runs getting to this point, and it all comes down to this. UConn, this team is nothing short of a buzzsaw. You look at the way this team has played in this tournament. Alabama's the one team that even really gave UConn a fight, and turns out the Huskies won it by 14. That's just how good this team is. But they're taking on a Purdue team that is, I feel like, one of the few teams even from the start in this tournament that could beat UConn. Purdue's a team that's got experience. They have finally broken through. They've made a run, and they're built to win a national championship. We'll be over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today. So with that, let's get started. Against me on Monday night in Glendale. And the spread's going UConn by 6.5 here, which is obviously what you'd expect. The Huskies have been a favorite, and actually a pretty heavy favorite in pretty much every game they've played in this tournament to this point. I mean, UConn's played some tough teams in this tournament. They've actually had a somewhat difficult road for a number one overall seed, but the way this team has been so dominant, they've won their first 5 games in this tournament by an average of 25 points. That is pretty much unheard of, and that really just goes to show how strong of a squad this UConn team is and how well coached they are, how complete. That's just, I mean, even some of the best teams in the country haven't come close to UConn. Over under 145.5. BPI is going UConn as well, 54%. So BPI thinks this one could be a bit of a close one. You look at the run for both teams. It all started when UConn took on Stetson in the first round, beat them 91-52. Then took on Boo Buie and Northwestern, which, I mean, UConn got off to a hot start there and never looked back, won at 75-58. Took on San Diego State, which was a rematch of last year's national championship where UConn won their 5th ever national title last season. Beat them no problem, 82-52, and that game was a little bit closer at first, but UConn still won it by 30. That's kind of been the story too for UConn, is the way this team pulls away in the second half. San Diego State was competitive, Illinois was competitive, same with Alabama, but in the end UConn still finished winning the game by at least 14 points in those last 3 rounds. And you look at Purdue's run on the other side. They beat Grambling in the first round by 28. Took care of Utah State, put up 106 in that one. That was a very dominant win. I feel like in that game, based on the way this team played Utah State, we kind of all knew that Purdue was bound for a pretty deep run in this tournament. They eventually beat Gonzaga, which was a huge win. Gonzaga was playing very well, coming off of big wins against McNeese State and Kansas. And then they beat Tennessee, who was really playing well as well. So, I mean, it's obviously been a really impressive run for Purdue, especially. They beat NC State, which is, you could say, the tournament really Cinderella team, having been the 11th seed. And just the run that NC State had was nothing short of incredible. But Purdue, in the end, was the team to put that to an end there, and for UConn to beat Alabama. Nothing short of impressive there. Alabama being as strong of a team as they are offensively, allowing 72 points is pretty impressive. And you look at the first 4 games for UConn, didn't allow more than 60 points, or more than 58 points for that matter in those first 4 games. So these are the 2 best teams of the tournament without a doubt. Stat comparison, UConn 82 points a game this season, 64 points allowed. I mean, just that margin is just incredible. You look at teams across the bracket and around the country, you got a lot of teams that are maybe really strong on offense, not so much on defense, or vice versa. UConn is at a top tier level on both offense and defense. This is the most complete team in the country, and that's just why they're so tough to beat. Some teams can be competitive with them at first, but UConn is just so complete of a team to the point where it's just almost impossible for any team to keep up with them for 40 minutes and have a chance to win, especially in a big game situation. But you look at Purdue, this team has especially played well against good teams this season, being 8-0 against the top 25, and that doesn't include their wins against really good opponents in this tournament. 84 points a game for the Boilermakers, 70 points allowed. Not as strong of a defense, maybe you could say, although defense has been incredible for Purdue in this tournament, even though it maybe hasn't been on the same level as UConn for the most part. Purdue still played at a very high level on both sides, without a doubt. Your key points, UConn 36 wins this season. Huskies are a brutal team, no sign of slowing down at all. I mean, once again, you look at the San Diego State game, the last 3 games for UConn in this tournament, all 3 of them were competitive, at least at first. Alabama hung with UConn better than anyone else did, which is kind of what you would expect, considering Alabama is, you could say, the best team in the country on offense, and they were hitting shots and they were looking good there for a while, but UConn just simply was too much in the end. And that's just the case for most of the games where teams are having to play UConn. They can once again hang with them for a little while, especially if they're good, but it just isn't going to be enough to hang with them for 40 minutes. And they're seeking their 6th overall national title. This would be their 2nd straight as well, obviously, when they beat San Diego State last year to win their 5th ever. So this would be the 6th ever for the Huskies. And they have won every tournament game by an average of 25 points. That is, I mean, even if you look at the tournament run for this team last year, they didn't have a single close game. They were dominant all the way through, and that really just shows Dan Hurley and how well coached of a team this is. I mean, for this team not to even show really a bit of error in these tournament games, in these big games. I mean, they've had a few competitive matchups early on, but they always pull away, and that's why this team is, I mean, they're just complete. They're so tough to beat. But for Purdue, you got Zach Edey, who's been incredible in this tournament. Purdue obviously kind of built a reputation last few years for being a bust in the tournament, an early exiting team, but Purdue has really changed that this season. They have been firing on all cylinders, a really impressive tournament run for the Boilers. And I feel like if you look at around the country as well, UConn's taken 3 losses this season. And I mean, you look at Purdue as a whole, I feel like if anyone could be UConn in this tournament, it could be Purdue. I mean, Purdue's a complete team. You got Zach Edey, who down low is a force, and it's just so brutal to stop him, and he just draws so many fouls. That's why Purdue is able to hang with so many good teams and win so many big games. They've got a guy underneath that you can't go wrong with. And so, I mean, you consider that. You consider UConn in this situation. I feel like Purdue's a team that could beat UConn. Doesn't mean that they will, but I do think that Purdue definitely could put up a fight here and at least have a chance to win this national title. But this would be the first ever NCAA tournament title for Purdue as well. And this is really a situation where, I mean, Purdue's built for this. We have known that this has been one of the best teams in the country all season. It is no surprise to see them in this situation here in April in the national championship. But with that, let's get a prediction here for UConn and Purdue. Who's going to win the national title on Monday night? In the end, I kind of consider Purdue for a second, but I just can't bet against UConn. Just the way this team has played and how they play in the tournament and how they always pull away later on in their matchups. And how well coached of a team this is, I simply can't bet against UConn here. I'm going to take them by 8 to win this matchup. Although as I mentioned before, I think Purdue's a team that can really give this team a fight. But we just have no reason really to pick against UConn at this current point, given how they've played down the stretch here. So I'm going Huskies here. I'm going to say 55%. So once again, I feel like this is a closer matchup, at least in last year's national championship game. I think that Purdue is a team that can really keep it close for a long time here. But I feel like it would make sense for this to be a similar situation to UConn's previous 3 games or so in this tournament. Kind of a competitive game at first, but later on in the matchup, UConn kind of pulls away. So I'm going to take the Huskies in that situation, and UConn to cover the spread in the end. Huskies win their 2nd straight national title, and very much well deserved. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup. Do you think Purdue can take down UConn? Let me know your thoughts, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. My name's Evan. This is All Sports Central. Stay tuned for more. We'll catch you on the next one.